So how does a startup with a totally wild idea become, well, Google? A huge part of the answer lies in a really simple goal-setting tool. It was actually a gift from a Silicon Valley legend. Today we're going to unpack the story of how these things called OKRs helped build an empire. Let's just start with this quote because it really says everything. When Google's co-founder, Larry Page, says he wishes he'd had this framework 19 years earlier, you know it's something special. This is the very system he credits with helping Google achieve that legendary 10x growth time and time again.
So where does all this come from? Well, it comes from this book, Measure What Matters, by the legendary venture capitalist John Doerr. And Doerr didn't just write about this system, he personally delivered it to Google in its absolute earliest days.
Okay, let's paint a picture. The year is 1999. The place, of course, is Silicon Valley. And this small, super ambitious company called Google is about to get a gift that will literally change everything. You gotta remember, back then, Google was just overflowing with these huge visionary ideas. The founders, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, had this massive mission to organize all of the world's information. Pretty big goal, right? But what they didn't have was management experience. They needed some kind of system to channel all that brilliant energy and turn that vision into an actual reality. And that's where John Doerr comes in. See, he'd learned this incredibly powerful goal-setting system way back in the 70s as an engineer at Intel. So fast forward a couple of decades and now he's a venture capitalist. He invests $11.8 million in Google. But his most valuable contribution? It wasn't the money. It was the system he presented to about 30 employees who were all gathered around a ping-pong table that was serving as their boardroom. It all boiled down to this one simple idea for Doerr. Ideas are easy, execution is everything. This was the exact problem he was there to solve for this young, brilliant, but kind of chaotic team at Google.
So what was the secret weapon he brought them? What was this big gift? Well, it's a surprisingly simple acronym, OKRs. It stands for Objectives and Key Results.
All right, so first up, you've got the O for objective, and that's your what. It's your destination, a really significant, concrete, and hopefully inspirational goal. Doerr has this great line for it. He says a good objective is like a vaccine against fuzzy thinking. It just forces you to be crystal clear about where you're trying to go. And then you've got the KRs, the key results. This is the how. These are the specific, measurable, verifiable steps that are actually going to get you to that objective. And here's the thing, a key result isn't a key result unless it has a number. There's no gray area here. You either hit the metric or you don't. Simple as that. So the difference is really simple, but man, is it powerful. The objective is the what. What do we want to achieve? And the key results are the how. How are we going to know we're getting there?
And get this is my favorite part. Doerr actually used an OKR to teach them the concept, right there in the room. His objective for that meeting was to get a planning model established for Google. And his key results? They were the exact steps of his presentation. He finished on time, they created some sample OKRs, and they agreed to try it for 3 months. He literally used an OKR to teach OKRs. How cool is that?
Okay, so you might be wondering, why is a system like this so important? I mean, don't we all set goals? Well, yeah, but setting the right goals the right way is incredibly hard, and getting it wrong can be, well, downright dangerous. I mean, it's not an exaggeration to say that poorly set goals can be toxic. There's a famous paper from Harvard Business School called Goals Gone Wild, and it basically warns that if you set these really narrow, high-pressure targets, it often leads to unethical behavior, reckless risk-taking, and just kills motivation. But here's the thing. That's the risk with bad goals. The flip side is that decades of research have proven that good goals, well, they're one of the most powerful drivers of performance out there. Study after study shows that specific, difficult goals lead to way higher output than these vague ones like, hey, just do your best. And this is exactly where OKRs shine. They're designed to avoid that goals gone wild trap because they link everyone's work directly to the company's bigger mission. They create alignment, they give people clarity on what really matters, and that in turn boosts things like job satisfaction and engagement. Okay, so how did this actually play out at Google? Did it work? Well, let's just say the results were world-changing. The founders, Larry and Sergey, they were all in. They totally got it. They understood this was the tool that could keep their company on track as it started growing like crazy. In fact, in the early days, Larry Page himself would spend 2 days every single quarter
personally reviewing the OKRs for every single engineer. Think about that. The CEO of the company spending days every quarter looking at individual goals. That tells you how critical this was to them.
And the results of all that commitment? Well, you can pretty much sum it up with one single, powerful number: 7.
That's the number of Google products that each have over 1 billion users. Search, Chrome, Android, Maps, YouTube. I mean, think about the scale of that. These aren't just successful products. In many ways, they are the modern internet. Dora calls OKRs the scaffolding that made it possible to build these massive home runs.
So at this point, you're probably thinking, okay, that's great for Google, but does this stuff actually work anywhere else?
Is this just some magic formula for Silicon Valley giants? Or is it a tool that, anyone can actually use?
And the answer is a huge, resounding no. OKRs are like a Swiss Army knife for execution. They're used by this huge range of organizations. We're talking about global brands like Disney and BMW, and also nonprofits like the Gates Foundation, which uses them to fight diseases like malaria. The principles are just universal.
So when you boil it all down, what OKRs really do is create a shared language for getting things done. They make it super clear what needs to happen and who's responsible for what, so everyone is pulling in the same direction. It's just a simple, transparent system for turning massive ambitions into measurable results.
And that leaves us with a final thought, right? This isn't just a tool for giant corporations. It's a way of thinking that you can apply to your own team, your career, or even your personal life. So it kind of makes you ask yourself, what's the one objective that matters most to you right now, and what are the key results that are actually going to get you there?